U44 has just dropped on the PTS, and with it came a new scribing skill, Banner Bearer. This is a completely support-based skill and has some pretty good buffs like a 6% increase to dot, direct, and AoE damage, a mitigation buff, as well as a CC immunity buff. These are all super strong options. You can also, with the signature scripts, get 450 weapon spell damage or use the class scripts passively. This means on classes like Arcanist, you will passively generate Crux using their class mastery script. On paper, all of this sounds amazing, and it really actually is. However, the skill has some major downsides that make using this skill hard to slot or just annoying and awkward to use. The first major issue with the skill is it's a toggle skill. This skill acts a lot like the guard skill, and if it's not double barred, it will fall off every time you swap bars to the bar that doesn't have it. A friend of mine was joking that you could just put this skill on a Sork, have them run 2 pets, Oak and Soul in this, and they would only actually have 2 buttons they would have to press throughout a fight. But for the real reason that this might be a problem is, you would most likely want to put this on the healer or OT, but first for the healer, most of their skills are required in most of the content in the game. OTs generally would be a decent option, however there are some fights in the game where the OT cannot spare the extra skill slots to use this skill. This really only leaves you with one really good option for this skill, which is Arcanist, as most of their skills are basically useless to their overall damage. However, I don't know many DPS that would want to use this skill actively. This really isn't the worst thing overall, as you only really have to drop 2 skills, however, this isn't actually true for 12-man content. Banner Bearer, like other scribing skills, has a capped limit of the amount of people it can hit at 6. This means in a 12-man group, you'll have to have 2 people running this skill. This isn't the worst thing, however, organizing this would just be annoying for most groups. In a good group, you could probably get this to work out, but in most groups, getting people to separate into 2 stacks is already hard enough. This seemingly arbitrary cap of 6 people being hit by any scribing skill is something I actively want to make a video on, as it's kind of a stupid thing and it makes all scribing skills notoriously weird to use. I wasn't able to test if this skill is smart targeted, and if it is, it makes it a lot better. However, if it's not and it just hits the 6 closest people to you, like a lot of the other scribing skills do, this skill could be overall pretty useless. The other downside to this skill, and it's not even really a downside, it's just something that happens, is you cannot stack banner bearers together. A player can only be affected by 1 banner bearer at the same time, and if you're the one casting it, you will always be given your banner bearer buff. This next part kills the skill for me personally, as I don't like skills that function like this, as it takes some of the fun out of the game for me. I personally enjoy ESO's combat system more than a lot of MMOs, as you're a lot more active in your playstyle and you hit more buttons overall than most other MMOs. Luckily, the skill, you only lose 2 skill slots. As I said, on a Sork, if you use this with the Sork pets, you have 6 of your 10 skill slots used by just toggleable skills. For me personally, it's just not a fun way to play the game, and when I saw that this was like this, it was kind of disappointing to me. On to the last downside, though personally I don't think it's that big of a downside. On all of the tooltips besides the CC immunity, you lose 33% of your recoveries, and that really kind of sucks, but at the end of the day, it's not really the worst thing either. Tanks are already dealing with Spalder, and sometimes Spalder will be worse than the 33% recovery nerf that Banner Bearer gives. For me, I think the idea of Banner Bearer is cool. Giving players a cool support buff without having to really think about it is an interesting idea. However, I would just like a more active role from the skill. The bigger problem for me comes from the way ZOS has implemented scribing skills and the way they artificially make them worse with weird caps on how many people they can affect. For me, it just seems like a skill that you make an aura around yourself should hit the entire group no matter the size. It just doesn't really fill that leader, like, commander role thing where you're running into the battle with a flag on your back and giving everyone this massive buff for whatever reason. It just doesn't fit that role great for me. For me personally, I would like to see the skill adjusted quite heavily during the PTS cycle, as a more active role would be nicer, as most of the support skills are already pretty passive anyway. These are the 2 quick changes I would make to the skill, though they would not work together. For the first one, if they wanted to keep it a passive toggleable skill, I don't see the purpose in not letting it hit 12 people. It just seems arbitrary for no reason not letting it do this. If the values on this skill are too high, you could always just nerf them and then give it the ease of use by letting it hit 12 people. The other one, which I would prefer, is giving it a more active role with a cost and an actual duration. Trample is a good example of this, as it's turned into one of my favorite skills to use before going into ad pulls. Just chucking your mount at the ads and then having a massive buff going into the pull is great. Like Trample, my idea would give it like a 2-second cast time, so it's hard to use in actual fights, but going into a fight you could get this massive pre-buff of damage. And in downtime before your group's next big burn, you can also cast it to give them a little bit more of an edge on the burn that they're about to do. I feel like there's a lot of interesting ways they could go about using this skill. However, I feel like the toggle is probably the worst they could have done, as if it's for ease of use, it really didn't help them, as there's only a cap of 6, so most groups won't be using it anyway. And you'll probably run into the issue of, if someone's using it and you're using your own and you have a better version of theirs but they get theirs up first, you could just end up having this one person ruin a buff for a lot of people, and just could get annoying after a while. I feel like if they made it a toggle for ease of use, it just kind of was the most backwards way you could have done that, but that's really just my opinion. I want to know what you guys think of this skill. If you've gotten a chance to test it out, what do you think it's going to do for endgame comps and like endgame in general? Do you think it'll actually be good and used? But yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to get my opinion out there on the skill before it gets changed a billion times in PTS. Originally I had this script written up with all of the like crap it can do, all of the buffs and whatnot. But as I kept working on it, I realized this is all going to change over the course of the PTS, so no one really cares about it right now. I just wanted to give my opinion and my thought process on how they could make it a better skill and more fun to use. But I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.